One time during a trip to the beach, the main character, Nagasumi, nearly drowned in the sea but was luckily rescued. Going back to earlier that day, he and his family had returned to the seaside town to visit his grandmother. It had been a long time since the whole family had come back here, and Nagasumi didn't seem as excited about the trip as his parents. After getting off the train and catching a bus up the mountain, the whole family finally arrived at his grandmother's house. That evening, the family gathered together to enjoy dinner. His grandmother said that the family should visit her more often, but since life in the city was quite busy, they rarely had the opportunity to come back together like this. The grandmother suggested that if they were too busy, then Nagasumi and his mother could just leave his father behind in the city and come back here on their own. But Nagasumi had just finished his exams, which was why he had free time at the moment. Since he wasn't particularly good at studying, his family often had to send him to extra classes to help him pass his tests. His grandmother said that his father hadn't been good at studying either, yet now he was living just fine and had a warm, happy family, so Nagasumi didn't need to worry too much about it. After dinner, his father invited Nagasumi to go swimming the next day, but he didn't seem too interested. His father thought Nagasumi didn't know how to swim, and instead of admitting that, Nagasumi's pride caused him to end up drowning the very next day. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, he was saved by a mermaid. Waking up on the shore, his father scolded Nagasumi for sleeping there and making him worry and search all over, thinking he had drowned. Nagasumi told him what had happened. His father was still skeptical, but if Nagasumi really had drowned and ended up here, maybe he had been saved by a mermaid, though that sounded like nonsense he just made up. So his father told him to get back home before he caught a cold. That night, Nagasumi tried to tell his family that he really had been saved by a mermaid. His parents didn't believe him, but his grandmother said that if Nagasumi truly had been saved by a mermaid, something big was about to happen. Nagasumi described the mermaid he had seen, and then suddenly a girl who looked just like the mermaid he met appeared at their house. She introduced herself as Sido and said she wanted to marry Nagasumi, and that he had to take responsibility for what happened that afternoon. Before his parents even understood what was going on, they started beating Nagasumi up. Then, 3 people who looked like gangsters showed up and requested that Nagasumi's entire family come meet their boss. Nagasumi's parents panicked, realizing their son had somehow offended a Yakuza family. They were taken to a cliff and pushed into the sea. The whole family thought they were about to be killed, but then Sido suddenly pulled them deeper underwater, and Nagasumi realized that she was the mermaid who had saved him. He woke up inside Sido's house, surprised that mermaids were real and that they were now at the bottom of the ocean. Sido's parents came out to introduce themselves and explained that mermaids have a rule. If a human sees their true form, that human must die. Naturally, Sido's father didn't want this rule to be broken. In fact, he wanted to kill anyone who knew about mermaids to protect his daughter. The curly-haired guy, Masa, stepped in to stop his boss and told Nagasumi's family not to worry. Sido refused to accept this situation, saying that if her father killed the people she had gone out of her way to save, then her actions would have been meaningless. She was willing to accept punishment herself, but her father flatly refused. Sido's mother told Nagasumi that her husband had a very hot temper, while their daughter was extremely stubborn, so she proposed that the 2 of them get married to resolve the situation peacefully. Nagasumi's parents immediately agreed, but Nagasumi himself hesitated, which enraged Sido's father again. He decided to forget about marriage and ordered his men to hunt Nagasumi down. Nagasumi ran for the door and opened it, letting water flood inside, but Sido's father sent a shark after him, forcing Sido to lead him out the back to escape. When they reached the surface, Sido was still stuck in her mermaid tail form, so Nagasumi carried her even though he was the one in trouble. He asked her why she saved him even though she knew it was against the rules. Sido said it was just her wish. But right then, Sido's father caught up and had an octopus throw Nagasumi back to him. He was ready to draw his sword and cut Nagasumi down, but Nagasumi suddenly called him father-in-law. Nagasumi declared that he would agree to a formal engagement with Sido, get to know her over time, and then let her decide for herself later. But even after agreeing, Sido's father still refused to accept him and even wanted to throw him back into the sea. And just like that, Nagasumi got engaged to a mermaid. Afterward, Nagasumi's family returned to meet Sido's mother to confirm the engagement, while Sido's father had been locked up to prevent him from causing harm to others. Back at his grandmother's house, seeing how worried Nagasumi looked, she thought he probably didn't like Sido. But that wasn't the case, things had just happened too fast. She told him that there would be a festival tonight and that he should take Sido there to try and improve their relationship. She gave him some money to use for the evening. That night, Nagasumi met Sito in front of the festival fair and went in with her. Sito shyly said that she wanted to eat cotton candy. Nagasumi gallantly offered to pay, but Sito chose to pay for herself and didn't want Nagasumi to treat her. Nagasumi then noticed that the cotton candy shop owner was one of the mermaids who served the Sito family. Not just the cotton candy stall, every stall they went to was like that. Sito then explained that most of the stalls here were managed by her family, so she wanted to visit as many as possible. Nagasumi also noticed that Sito's father was hiding in one of the stalls, and he knew that if he held Sito's hand, her father would go after him. But Sito wanted to link arms with him, making Nagasumi realize trouble was coming. Then Nagasumi received a phone call, and Sito's father threatened to take his life for what he just did. However, not wanting to ruin Sito's mood, Nagasumi decided to face his future father-in-law on his own. Sito then went to play the goldfish scooping game, but the thing Nagasumi had to scoop was a shark. He mustered his strength and threw the shark away, but water splashed onto Sito's legs, revealing her mermaid tail. Nagasumi had to take her away to dry off so her tail would return to legs. At this time, Sito's parents were also leaving and saw Nagasumi and Sito in a corner. Thinking the two were doing something indecent, Sito's father immediately tried to slash Nagasumi. But Masa quickly realized what Nagasumi was actually doing and stopped his boss. Sito realized her father had been causing trouble for Nagasumi all night and told him to go home. Unable to argue with his daughter, he had no choice but to spare Nagasumi for now. Masa also hoped Nagasumi would understand his boss. Sito then wanted Nagasumi to just forget everything that happened tonight. The two continued playing at the festival, and it was only then that Nagasumi found out Sito still went to school. Since the school principal was also a mermaid, he could make arrangements for her. Nagasumi also learned that Sito was actually very clumsy and often got herself wet easily. Nagasumi had to keep helping her and accidentally touched her too much, causing her to scream and blow him away with her ultrasonic wave. All mermaids have the ability to emit ultrasonic waves for attack, but Nagasumi was temporarily deaf now and couldn't hear anything. Sito apologized to Nagasumi for making him suffer through so much tonight. He wanted to do something to cheer her up, and then a souvenir shop appeared nearby. Nagasumi decided to give Sito a gift. She chose the cheapest ring. After that, the two went to the bonfire area to dance with the townspeople. Masa suddenly appeared to help Nagasumi learn how to dance, and Sito thought that he preferred learning from Masa. She said Masa and Nagasumi made a better couple, especially since Masa had taken Nagasumi's first kiss. She then ran away, and Nagasumi had to chase after her. He tried to explain to Sito that the thing with Masa was just a misunderstanding, but Sito realized she had dropped her ring. Nagasumi didn't think the ring was that important, but Sito did. Nagasumi realized that he had only thought of the engagement as a temporary plan, while Sito was completely serious about getting to know him, so he helped her look for the ring. Sito's father overheard this, and not long after, Sito's parents brought the ring and gave it to her. Sito's mother said that her husband had also proposed to her at a festival like this and had been so embarrassed that he threw the ring away. The ring ended up in Masa's hands, which made Sito jealous, and she screamed in Nagasumi's face. At that moment, Nagasumi's soul met his grandfather in heaven, and his grandfather wanted him to stay there with him. But Sito woke Nagasumi up. The next day, he had to bandage his whole body because of all the injuries he got that night. He knew that from now on, he would have to endure many more things like what happened today, so he couldn't afford to give up easily. A few days later, Nagasumi's father announced that the whole family would have to return to the city because he had received a sudden work assignment and could no longer extend his leave. He also wanted Nagasumi to clearly explain the situation to Sito. Although he knew he had to explain things to Sito, the next day, while hanging out with her, Nagasumi didn't know how to bring it up. Sito also found it strange that someone who had always opposed their relationship, like her father, would lend them a deserted island to spend the day. Nagasumi was then introduced to Maki, a shellfish spirit and Sito's friend. Masa later brought all three of them to the island and warned Nagasumi to be careful of this place. Upon arriving, Nagasumi thought he'd finally get to enjoy himself this time. But unexpectedly, as soon as Sito left, Maki revealed her true nature and considered him a disgusting guy. Maki said she had been protecting Sito all these years and wouldn't allow Nagasumi to lay a hand on her. It was only now that Nagasumi realized Maki was an assassin and that she was very good at pretending to be innocent in front of Sito. Nagasumi understood that he would have to face Maki the entire day, but he also thought that Maki couldn't do anything to him with that tiny body. However, as soon as Sito saw a snake, Maki immediately used her shell to fire water bullets that destroyed the nearby trees. Only then did Nagasumi realize how powerful Maki was. But when Maki saw Sito hug Nagasumi, she fired at him again and pretended there was still a snake nearby. Once it was safe, Sito asked Nagasumi to apply sunscreen for her, but knowing Maki was still around and waiting to strike, he distracted Sito and tossed Maki away so that no one could interrupt them. But Maki soon returned and landed right on Nagasumi's head. She was determined not to let anyone touch Sito's skin. Nagasumi admitted that he did have some impure thoughts, so he let Maki apply the sunscreen for Sito instead. He then had to sit with his back turned and restrain himself from reacting to whatever was going on behind him. When they went swimming, Nagasumi made a few sarcastic remarks about the sea, which earned him a hit from Maki behind Sito's back. Maki then said she wanted to go look at coral, so Sito pulled Nagasumi down into the water with her. But they soon had to return to shore because Nagasumi couldn't withstand the underwater pressure. Maki told Sito to go dry off her legs and said she would take care of Nagasumi. She then tried to stage an accident that would kill Nagasumi because she believed humans and merfolk should never know about each other if it ever happened. One species would have to go extinct. Nagasumi understood that, but since his life was saved by Sito, he wanted to live according to her wishes. Maki didn't care and was about to kill him when Sito stepped in to stop her. Sito didn't blame Maki, but she wanted Maki to respect her decision. Maki then decided to give up and no longer pursue Nagasumi. Even so, she still wouldn't treat him kindly. That afternoon, as they were heading back, Nagasumi finally brought up the topic with Sito that he would be returning to the city the next day and promised to come back to visit her on every holiday. But Sito decided that she would go to the city with Nagasumi because she was his fiancée. Both Maki and Sito's father were furious and upset about this decision, but neither of them could change Sito's mind, so they had no choice but to watch her leave. The next day, when they boarded the train to return, Nagasumi thought Sito might be sad about leaving her hometown. But then he discovered that his father-in-law was still secretly following them. He pulled the curtain and hit it hard, causing him to fall off, and when he opened the bag, he found that Maki had also followed them here. And so, Nagasumi faced another new turning point. When they arrived home, Nagasumi asked Maki not to show her face so as not to cause trouble if someone saw her. But his parents completely accepted Maki and were totally fooled by her innocent appearance, since only Nagasumi knew that Maki was actually the assassin sent to take his life. When they went inside, his parents gave Nagasumi's room to Sito and made their son move to the attic, because he used to sneak up there to play when he was little, so they thought he'd be happy staying there. Nagasumi refused to accept it, and Sito volunteered to stay in the attic instead. Nagasumi gallantly decided to give up his room for Sito, but that decision was mocked by Maki. That night, while Nagasumi was taking a bath, he started thinking more about his future life. Suddenly, Sito and Maki walked in. Sito was embarrassed and screamed, destroying the bathroom. His parents were shocked at the damage to the house, so Sito brought out gold to make up for it, also considering it her dowry for marrying into his family. Sito then tried to explain what had happened, but Maki blamed it all on Nagasumi, saying he had barged into the bathroom on purpose, leading to his father punching him. The next day, Nagasumi helped Sito decorate her room. After they finished, he invited Sito to go shopping. Maki was sleeping at the time, so Nagasumi told Sito to just let her sleep and that the two of them could go shopping together. He was very happy not to have to bring that threat along with them. Nagasumi and Sito then had a fun and private time together. Meanwhile, his mother was admiring how cute Maki looked while sleeping until savage words started coming out of Maki's mouth. At the same time, Sito and Nagasumi suddenly saw two guys harassing two female students. Sito wanted to step in heroically, but Nagasumi advised her to avoid those big guys. Just then, a girl appeared and stopped the two guys, allowing the female students to get away. Nagasumi recognized her as Mawari, a classmate from school. Mawari had a personality where if she believed something was right, she would carry it out no matter what. She then pushed the two thugs toward Nagasumi, and since Sito really wanted to step in, Nagasumi had no choice but to drag the two guys into the water, then remembered that he couldn't swim, while the two guys could. Mawari jumped in after him to save him, but then remembered that she also couldn't swim. Sito had to secretly take care of the two thugs and bring both Nagasumi and Mawari back to shore. Nagasumi thought Mawari was no longer an elementary school kid, so she needed to learn how to be more feminine. He then realized Sito was behind him and let himself drift along the water to go help Sito deal with her mermaid tail. Just as Sito's legs returned to normal, Maki showed up again to punish Nagasumi for secretly bringing Sito to this place. Maki fired bullets at him non-stop and pushed him into another corner. Mawari showed up, forcing Nagasumi to pretend Maki was a doll. Mawari didn't want to judge him for playing with dolls, and he had no choice but to go along with it because he didn't want Mawari to become Maki's target. Sito praised Mawari's heroic spirit and said she was the daughter of the police chief, so these kinds of things were normal for her. Hearing that, Sito got nervous because the police were the greatest enemy of her Yakuza family. That night, Maki warned Sito to be careful because their neighbor was the home of the police chief. Even though she was worried, Sito didn't want to leave Nagasumi and return home. At that moment, Nagasumi, unaware of everything, walked in and was blown away by Sito's ultrasonic wave. Meanwhile, Masa was drinking at a bar when Sito's father showed up. With some alcohol in his system, Masa started talking without respecting rank or formality. If it weren't for Sito, he said, he would have stopped that entire train to bring his daughter home. Not long after, the new school year began, and Nagasumi was woken up by an alarm clock in the form of Maki, who would stab him in the head if he didn't dodge in time. After getting dressed and going to meet Sito, Nagasumi's mother informed him that Sito's father had sent a letter saying he would protect Sito at all times during the upcoming semester. Upon hearing this, Nagasumi got chills. At school, he met up with a classmate named Saru, who really did resemble a monkey. Saru asked who Sito was, and Nagasumi said she was his relative. Once inside the school, Mawari came over to ask about his relationship with Sito. The class rep then said that there would be a new student and a new teacher joining the class today. Right after that, the new teacher arrived. Saru thought it was Sito and charged forward, only to be punched away by him. Nagasumi was shocked to see that the new teacher was his father-in-law. He said the old teacher had gone on maternity leave and then introduced Sito to the class. Hearing both their surnames made Mawari suspicious that there was something between them. The father-in-law tried to make Sito sit next to the teacher's desk, but she chose to sit next to Nagasumi instead. The father-in-law didn't like this, but since Nagasumi was already sitting there, he had no right to interfere. Also, since the entrance ceremony was about to begin, they couldn't stall for time here any longer. Sito clearly knew that her father had come here to keep an eye on her and Nagasumi, but only now did Nagasumi remember that Saru was still unconscious behind them, so he took him to the infirmary. Once again, he was surprised to find that his mother-in-law was also here, working as the school's nurse. Since their family had some friends in the Ministry of Education, arranging that was easy. As soon as Saru woke up, he was immediately kicked unconscious again so that the mother and daughter could talk more easily. His mother-in-law even said that if Nagasumi felt Sito wasn't enough, he could consider bringing her in as a second wife. Nagasumi panicked and ran away, only to discover that Masa had also come here to work as a teacher alongside the other two. Not only that, but the octopus also came here, and Nagasumi was amazed they had managed to keep the octopus hidden. The shark that always wanted to eat Nagasumi was also here, and had become the PE teacher. Sito had to come save Nagasumi, and she thought everyone had gone too far by replacing so many of the school's teachers. Just when Nagasumi thought Sito would get angry and send them all back, she was actually happy that everyone cared so much about her. As for Nagasumi, he certainly didn't like it, because from now on, he would have to see his father-in-law every day, all the time, at school. While he was feeling hopeless, Masa showed up as a source of emotional support. Masa understood that Nagasumi was under pressure because of his father-in-law's antics, but he said that if Nagasumi gave up on Sito just because of things like this, then the feelings he had for her were far too easy to abandon. Thanks to that advice, Nagasumi regained his confidence to move forward. The next morning, as he was getting ready to go to school, Saru came to walk with Sito. But Nagasumi chased Saru away, saying that only he was allowed to monopolize Sito. The two of them entered serious mode to battle it out. Nagasumi was determined to become a real man when Saru discovered a doll in Nagasumi's bag. He saw Maki poking her head out and told her to get back inside, but she said he was acting weird for talking to a doll like her. Saru then walked away, thinking Nagasumi had gone through some mental breakdown. Just like that, his path to becoming a man crumbled right at the first step. That day at school, Nagasumi wanted to show off in front of Sito, but his father-in-law only taught nonsense. Masa's lessons were very easy to understand, but they had nothing to do with the curriculum. So in the end, Nagasumi couldn't show anything at all. Later, during PE, Saru invited Nagasumi to go peep into the girls' changing room. Saru kept tempting him, almost causing Nagasumi to give in, but he managed to control himself in time. Even so, he was spotted by the shark teacher. Saru escaped immediately, while the shark jumped at the chance to try to eat him. Cornered, Nagasumi had no choice but to charge straight through the girls' changing room. He was caught by the girls, and Mawari immediately wanted to sentence him to death. That afternoon, he was interrogated and scolded by Mawari. Nagasumi decided to take the blame and keep all the secrets hidden. Once again, his mental state was shaken, and he began thinking about heading up into the sky to go to Seto. But Seto really did come to find him. She felt useless for not being able to clear his name. She believed Nagasumi had his reasons for what he did, and she felt it was her duty to trust her fiancé. Originally, Nagasumi only became Seto's husband because of duty and law, but now, the feelings he had for Seto were starting to grow more and more. The next morning, Nagasumi asked Seto to keep their relationship secret at school for now. Saru noticed the two of them had a secret and wanted to find out, but of course, they both refused. However, the father-in-law also wanted to know what the secret between them was, as he was worried Nagasumi might go too far with Seto. On another day, Nagasumi's father woke up to see Seto making breakfast. It reminded him of when he and his wife were young and had a beautiful love. Even though they were still in debt from buying a house, they had decided to treat it as something that would bond them together forever. Nagasumi's mother then appeared, thinking her husband was checking out their daughter-in-law. Nagasumi also came downstairs, and his mother wondered whether he was bothering Seto at school. But he explained that they were keeping their relationship a secret at school to avoid complications. At school, seeing how surrounded Seto was by other people made Nagasumi feel a little uneasy because she no longer belonged to him alone. Nagasumi was then surrounded by a group of boys because he and Seto looked too affectionate. Mawari came to rescue him, and Saru told Seto that Mawari and Nagasumi had been best friends since childhood, so close that the two of them once won a card game tournament together. Mawari was still proud of those days, while Nagasumi didn't like it and didn't want to bring it up anymore. During a card game, Mawari saw Nagasumi and Seto happily together and couldn't concentrate on playing. When she got home, she began to re-evaluate the relationship between her and the two main characters. She realized that whenever she saw the two of them being happy together, there was a kind of emergency alarm inside her that urged her to rise up. The next day, Mawari discovered that Seto and Nagasumi had stepped out of the same house. She immediately had to catch Nagasumi to interrogate him. He refused to confess, so she resorted to giving him a delicious meal.
Just like that.
Nagasumi confessed everything about how he and Seto were living together. That shocked the entire class and Mawari. Saru mentioned that Nagasumi and Seto were relatives, so Mawari wanted to know what Seto's father did for a living. She also said that the person currently tormenting Nagasumi over there was her own father, and that her mother was currently whacking her dad on the head. Since the principal allowed it, she was able to study in the same class where her dad taught. But right now, Nagasumi was being stared at with many hateful eyes. The class rep walked by and tripped, spilling water on Seto's leg. Nagasumi quickly covered and dried her leg. He was dragged away by the group of boys, while Mawari came to check and started suspecting that Seto was hiding some kind of secret. The next day, Nagasumi guessed that Mawari might have seen Seto's tail. Mawari deliberately spilled water on Seto, but Nagasumi stepped in to block it. She was certain she had seen Seto's legs turn into a mermaid tail, but Nagasumi denied it to keep Mawari from being dragged into this whole situation. Mawari was sure that Nagasumi was hiding something. She then continuously tried to splash water on Seto, but Nagasumi always managed to stop her even inside the girls' restroom. And because of that, Nagasumi got chased and slashed by his father-in-law for sneaking into the girls' restroom. After school, Nagasumi was still being hunted, while Seto wanted Maki to do something so she could help Nagasumi, since he was only trying to save Mawari. In the end, Mawari concluded that Seto was a fish and used cats to confirm it. The cats were too fast and Nagasumi couldn't stop them, and they quickly clung to Seto. Nagasumi said Mawari was being too unreasonable, prying into someone else's private life. She was bothering Seto just to satisfy her own curiosity, and he didn't want to consider someone like her a friend. Mawari became sulky and ran away. She was nearly hit by a car, so Nagasumi rushed in to push her out of the way. Seto also had to use her power to flip the car and save them both. Mawari was unconscious and brought to the hospital. Nagasumi knew that Mawari had seen Seto's powers. He intended to explain, but Saru blurted out that Seto had flipped the car using her terrifying scream. Nagasumi played along and said it was just Seto's talent. Later, Nagasumi accidentally bumped into Saru, causing a flower vase to fall toward Seto. But Mawari blocked Seto's legs. Even though she had learned the truth, she decided not to get more involved if it was a personal secret of Seto. Mawari then left and dragged Saru along with her. After that, a new character appeared, Runa. She was a famous idol, but was also a mermaid. Runa was confident in her singing voice and declared that as long as she could sing, humans would continue to admire her. After her performance, her manager informed Runa that Seto had arrived in the city. Upon hearing this, Runa immediately cancelled all her upcoming performances to go find Sito. Because back in the day, at the Golden Voice contest for children of Yakuza families, Runa was once outshined by Sito using the very singing voice that Runa was most proud of. Though Runa's singing was good, it still wasn't enough to move people's hearts the way Sito's did. That day, Nagasumi and Saru went home together, and Nagasumi gave Saru a ticket to Runa's concert that he had recently gotten. They were both fans of Runa, but Saru said that idol obsession was a betrayal of Sito. Nagasumi considered idols and real life to be two completely separate things. Suddenly, it started to rain out of nowhere, so the two had to quickly head home separately. As soon as Nagasumi returned home, he discovered a mermaid in front of his house, and to his shock, it was none other than the idol Runa he knew. Runa realized she had been spotted by Nagasumi, so she had no choice but to call her bodyguards to take Nagasumi away. The scene felt oddly familiar to him, but just then, Sito returned and the rain stopped. Upon reuniting with Runa, Sito immediately rushed in to hug her old friend. But Runa didn't see Sito as a friend, only as a rival. Inside the house, Sito explained the situation to Runa. At first, Runa mocked her, but seeing Sito genuinely happy with Nagasumi, Runa gradually became jealous. The truth was, Runa had pursued her idol career in hopes of one day showing off in front of Sito, as she had never been able to surpass her in anything. Therefore, she now decided to make Nagasumi her servant to steal Sito's happiness. Sito could only try to take him back, but Runa claimed that Nagasumi also had to take responsibility for discovering her true identity. The two fought over Nagasumi until he passed out. He still couldn't accept the reality that the idol he admired was nothing like what he thought. The next morning, just as he regained consciousness, he still couldn't believe Runa had come. But there she was, lying right next to him, making the situation feel like something out of a movie. Runa clung to him and waited for Sito to appear, then took the chance to point out that Sito still hadn't slept with Nagasumi, and she declared that she had already done that with him. Sito felt utterly defeated. She had lost Nagasumi's first kiss to Masa, and now his first time to Runa. But Nagasumi tried to comfort Sito, insisting that sleeping together and doing that were completely different. Runa separated the two, claiming that since she had accepted Nagasumi as her servant, he was only alive because of her mercy. When they arrived at school, everyone was shocked that idol Runa had transferred in. During introductions, she threw some shade at Sito's father and also announced she was Sito's neighbor. Haru wanted to know why Nagasumi kept hanging around famous people and joked that if Nagasumi had a magic lamp or the Dragon Balls, he should let him borrow them. Nagasumi confessed that he was now Runa's slave and had to live with her, but Saru argued that living with an idol was worth becoming a slave for. Saru couldn't accept that the two most popular girls in school were living under Nagasumi's roof, so he began to spiritually awaken and wanted to transcend this mundane world. Runa went to sit with Sito and declared her intention to surpass her in school popularity. She complained about forgetting her notebook and asked to borrow someone else's, quickly getting multiple offers including from Sito, who received even more. Nagasumi started to realize just how popular his wife really was. During class, Masa called Sito to the board to answer a question, and then called on Runa, but Runa pretended not to know. The class erupted into chaos, turning against Masa. When Nagasumi tried to defend Masa, he got dragged into the backlash. The classroom was now split into two clear factions, Team Runa and Team Sito. Saru warned Nagasumi that this battle was spiraling out of control, that if left unchecked, it would affect even the neutral students, and that a full-scale war might break out, leading to the school's downfall. Within 3 days, the two fanatic factions had solidified, but the one suffering most was Nagasumi himself. He was hunted by both groups, being the one favored by both school idols. Escaping Runa's fans only led to being cornered by Sito's, and even though Mawari tried to intervene, her words couldn't convince anyone, so she summoned the disciplinary committee to handle it. The class rep came and dragged Nagasumi away to hide. Mawari blamed the current chaos on him and demanded he choose between Runa and Sito. But Nagasumi insisted that who he chose had nothing to do with them. Still, given everything that had happened, it did matter, and if he didn't make a choice soon, he'd be thrown into the battlefield to fend for himself. During this time, Sito went to meet Runa to propose ending the war, but Runa believed that it would only end when one side fell. There couldn't be two tigers on one mountain. Sito was willing to yield, but that only made Runa more furious. Meanwhile, Nagasumi was thrown outside to continue being chased, while most teachers at school thought the students were simply playing tag. Nagasumi then met the enlightened Saru again, who advised him to stop running away, only he had the power to change the current situation between the two factions. Nagasumi understood and decided to act as a mediator. However, when he returned home, he learned that Maki had been injured a few days ago in a scuffle with Runa's bodyguards. His in-laws decided to mobilize the entire clan to take down Runa. As this was no longer a fan conflict, it had become a war between families. If Runa's side attacked one of theirs, they would retaliate. Sito wanted to go handle things herself, but Nagasumi stopped her, saying it was his responsibility as her husband to put an end to this meaningless conflict. He then went to meet Runa and proposed that she settle everything with Sito through singing. If Sito lost, he would become Runa's servant for life. A few days later, the stage was set, and Runa eagerly looked forward to defeating Sito once and for all. She had waited for this moment for a long time. She wanted to prove to the audience from the past contest that they were wrong for giving Sito the win. Even Runa's manager noticed she hadn't shown this much excitement in ages. At the start of the performance, Runa announced that she and Sito would take turns singing, and then the show began immediately. After Runa's first song, Nagasumi was visibly shaken by her voice, prompting his father-in-law to hurl him away in frustration. Runa had secured her advantage by inviting the majority of her fans to attend, claiming this wasn't cheating but simply the gap between an idol and an ordinary schoolgirl. Sito accepted the challenge and boldly declared she would defeat Runa using Runa's own song. Sito then used Runa's dance moves and song to perform. Contrary to expectations, though her technique was a bit rough, it caught the cameraman's full attention. Even though Runa's fans tried to reject it as plagiarism, they were ultimately overwhelmed by Sito's voice. Runa tried to interrupt, but rather than clashing, the two ended up performing in sync. The crowd in the stands went wild. Masa realized this was a side effect of mermaid singing amplified unnaturally. Nagasumi was immune only because he had built up a resistance. Mawari tried to intervene and stop this ridiculous battle, but was so disturbed by what she saw that she wanted to burn everything down. The stage had devolved into something unspeakable, so Runa responded by singing a war anthem to incite both fan factions to fight again. Nagasumi asked Sito to sing a peace song to reverse the tide. Sito agreed but needed Nagasumi's support. He was hypnotized and transformed into a martial arts master, defeating numerous people with some mysterious style. Under Sito's peaceful melody and Nagasumi's punches, the fans from both sides finally bowed their heads in surrender. Runa was about to be held accountable for injuring Maki, but just then, Maki showed up and admitted she was the one who had tried to attack Runa first, angry that she disrupted Sito's life. However, she had accidentally knocked herself out on a power pole, got embarrassed, and lied about being hurt. In truth, there was no feud between the two families. With that, the conflict was resolved. In the days that followed, Runa decided to stay at Nagasumi's house to experience a normal life. She also didn't dare talk back to Nagasumi's mother, not even once. A few days later, while playing ball at school, Saru heard a loud rumbling from underground. Suddenly, a mysterious submarine emerged from beneath the school field. The owner of the submarine was Kai, a man who had long pursued Sito. Kai claimed to be of noble lineage and rushed in with a sword to take care of the one who had stolen Sito from him, but Sito countered by smashing a ball into Kai to push him back. Mawari then charged Kai for assault and destruction of public property, prompting him to immediately throw money around to settle and compensate for everything. However, Mawari still arrested Kai, claiming it was bribery. Everyone soon realized that Kai was the son of the most powerful and globally renowned conglomerate in Japan. Kai had come today to take back his bride, Sito. He accused Nagasumi of kidnapping and forcing Sito to this city, but Nagasumi argued that Kai would never understand the suffering of being Sito's husband. Sito thought Nagasumi wasn't happy in this relationship, but he only said that to add dramatic flair. Kai recalled how, 4 years ago, when he was reclusive and isolated, Sito had visited his home and struck up a conversation. She taught him how to become more outgoing, and from then on, he had his eyes only on her. Runa then stepped in, telling Kai to stop pursuing Sito, but Kai gently turned her down, saying that while she was great, his heart was still with Sito. Runa couldn't accept this and challenged Sito again. Mawari had to control the growing chaos outside, while Kai confidently claimed Nagasumi could never bring Sito happiness. Nagasumi was shocked to be faced with such a painful truth so soon, since he was inferior to Kai in wealth, looks, and ability. The two clashed and ended up outside, where Nagasumi discovered that Kai, despite living in luxury, had a fear of wide open spaces due to getting lost in the desert as a child, hence his preference for tight spaces. Kai then tried to bribe Nagasumi to let him back inside. Sito was disappointed, as Kai, who once hated materialism, was now blinded by power and money. Realizing this, Kai decided to leave, departing in his submarine. Not long after, he also transferred into their school. At one point, the school hosted a sports festival, and to everyone's surprise, Kai declared he would defeat Nagasumi in the competition, prompting Nagasumi to participate. The first event was the girls' sprint, where Sito competed, but her father announced he would kill anyone who dared overtake her, making all other runners back off. Sito asked the class rep to redo the race fairly, and she won again. Next was the boys' sprint. Kai wore a spacesuit to overcome his fear of wide spaces, but it slowed him down too much. The following event involved playing roles, which is skipped here due to unclear rules. After several rounds, Runa, Sito, and Mawari had all gained tons of fans, while the class rep was completely ignored, making her furious. During lunch, Nagasumi's mom brought out food prepared by Sito and Runa true to form. The difference between their meals was like night and day. She then offered the food to Masa, revealing that not only Nagasumi but even his mom seemed to have feelings for him. After lunch came the flag-stealing horseback event. Kai pulled out a spear, but his heavy weight caused his horse team to collapse, breaking his helmet. Faced with the wide-open field, he panicked and screamed. Saru, now his self-proclaimed servant, presented him with a spare helmet. Kai accepted Saru as his subordinate and realized his team was still ahead in points. Sito's father, unwilling to see his daughter lose, declared that the final round would determine the overall winner once he made a decision. No one at school could stop it. Kai then stated that whoever lost the final event would have to disappear from Sito's life. Sito realized she was being wagered like a prize, but still chose to trust Nagasumi, giving him even more reason not to lose. The final round was a relay race. Nagasumi led at first, but Kai, having removed his heavy gear, overtook him. Suddenly, it began to rain, causing Kai to revert to his fish form Sito, and Runa also transformed. But the rain was so heavy that no one noticed. Saru then brought the submarine up to help Kai and ordered a missile launch at Nagasumi, prompting Sito to use her singing voice to neutralize the missile and simultaneously lull everyone on the field to sleep. However, since the missile fell straight down, it exploded on impact, and no one could determine the winner. Kai and Nagasumi thus agreed to settle their rivalry for Sito on another day. One day, while Nagasumi was asleep, he dreamed of a man in sleek black clothing wielding a hunting rifle trying to assassinate him. He awoke relieved that it was just a dream until he looked up and saw the very same man standing beside his bed. The man warned that if Nagasumi laid a hand on Runa, there would be consequences, then immediately kicked him down the stairs. Sito asked what was going on, and Nagasumi said there was a man in black upstairs. Remembering the man had mentioned Runa, he asked where she was, and Sito replied that Runa had left early that morning. They headed to school, where Saru approached the visibly shaken Nagasumi, and Sito also noticed how strange he was acting. Nagasumi figured that if he explained everything calmly and naturally, people might believe him. So in the calmest tone possible, he explained that a man in glossy black clothes with a hunting rifle had appeared in his room this morning to kill him. Naturally, everyone in class backed away and suggested he take the day off. Suddenly, the same man appeared again outside the classroom window, sending Nagasumi into a panic, but still no one believed him. He went to the infirmary and told his mother-in-law what happened, and she advised him to lie down and rest. He fell asleep and, upon waking, prepared to return to class only for the black-clad man to emerge from under the bed, sending Nagasumi into a frenzy. While fleeing down the hall, Nagasumi ran into Kai. The mysterious man reappeared behind Kai, making both of them sprint for their lives. When they got outside, Kai was too weak to continue due to his condition, but Saru arrived just in time to give him an astronaut suit so he could move again. The two ran into a room full of carved statues and thought they were safe until one statue moved. The man had followed them again, terrifying them into running once more. Cornered, Kai tried firing a bazooka, which failed, so he used his phone to signal a satellite to fire a laser down, but the target remained unharmed. Saru lowered a rope, calling to his master Kai to climb up, but Nagasumi clung to it too, causing all three of them to fall flat. They ran into a restroom, where the man followed their footprints. Preparing for the end, they embraced in relief when everything suddenly went quiet, thinking the man had left. But then, the wall behind them crumbled and he ambushed them from behind. At that moment, Sito appeared, declaring she wouldn't let anyone harm her husband. She tried to activate her power, but the man covered her mouth. Just then, Nagasumi's father-in-law arrived and dragged the black-clad man into the restroom for a showdown. The two engaged in a fierce but inconclusive battle. Their fight paused when Runa appeared, revealing the man to be her gang's boss and her father. She asked him what he was doing there. Embarrassed by her arrival, he turned away and ignored the approaching helicopter meant to pick him up, instead disappearing down a fiery shaft. He had abandoned all his work responsibilities just to see who was living with his daughter. Nagasumi, meanwhile, was left wondering what kind of insane world he had stepped into. A few days later, the school held its health check. The female students were told to undress for measurements. Outside that room, 3 boys were plotting to peek inside, and Kai, approaching the crack in the door, began fantasizing about catching a glimpse of a vulnerable Sido inside. Just then, his father-in-law appeared, and when Nagasumi turned around, his 2 friends were nowhere to be seen, leaving him to face the full wrath alone. After the health check, Runa was pretty upset because her weight had gone up, the reason being she'd been eating too much lately thanks to how delicious Nagasumi's mom's cooking was. Runa decided to start dieting from that day on and dragged Sido along with her since she couldn't suffer alone. Outside the door, Sido's dad overheard her talking about dieting and started planning something. Later, the 3 teens went home to figure out how mermaids could lose weight. On the screen, Shark and Masa were promoting a device that attaches to a mermaid's tail to enhance attractiveness to male fish. At that moment, Sido's father arrived with several crates as gifts to help with Sido's diet. Inside were all sorts of useful things. Runa pulled out a DVD and immediately dragged Sido off to train. Meanwhile, Nagasumi spotted a tape labeled 18+ and instantly grabbed it. His own dad appeared behind him, and the 2 started watching the mysterious item together. It turned out to be very fresh indeed, full of images of live fish before they were caught. To support his daughter's weight loss journey, Sido's dad even built an artificial waterfall machine for the 2 girls to train with. At the same time, Masa and the shark made a sauna room to try out. After training, Runa and Sido took a break, and Sido suggested that her dad should lose weight too, prompting him to immediately rush into the sauna. Nagasumi realized he'd never seen his father-in-law's true form, so he went to peek. But while spying on Masa, he was caught by his father-in-law and dad, who took turns beating him for being a pervert. Later, Nagasumi came into the living room and saw the energy drink Sido had consumed earlier. Without thinking, he drank the entire thing. Sido suddenly remembered and told him that the drink was only meant for mermaids. If a human drank it, something dangerous might happen. Sure enough, Nagasumi soon transformed into a giant version of himself and destroyed the entire house. Luckily, everyone had gotten out beforehand, except for Nagasumi's dad, who was still sitting in the bathroom and went into shock. His 30-year mortgage just went up in flames. Nagasumi lost control, so Sido had to use her singing to put the neighbors to sleep, but it didn't affect him. Moeri, out jogging, saw giant Nagasumi and thought she was hallucinating. The class rep looked out her window and assumed her glasses were broken. If things kept going like this, Nagasumi might destroy the entire city. Just then, Kai arrived in his submarine and crashed right into Nagasumi's weak spot. They then strapped Nagasumi to a missile and launched him straight to the moon. Everyone tracked him via satellite. He was still alive and dancing in space. Kai prepared to shoot another missile to finish him off, and Sido's dad in the background was getting ready to celebrate. But Nagasumi didn't die. When Sido saw him crying on the monitor, she turned to her father and asked if there was no other way to save him. Her mother suddenly appeared and apologized for being late. She brought a magic spear, explaining it could return Nagasumi to normal, but only if Sido's love was strong enough to throw it. Sido prepared to throw it but tripped and missed. Thankfully, the octopus delivered another spear. This time, she hit her mark, and Nagasumi was brought back. Seeing him unconscious, her father summoned Masa to give him CPR. When Nagasumi woke up, Sido hugged him tightly, but once again, his first and second kisses both belonged to Masa. Nagasumi's dad saw that his son had remembered everything, so he punched him in the face for destroying the 30 years of his youth. His mom told her husband not to hit him too hard or they'd have to pay more hospital bills, making Nagasumi wish he could go back to the moon. Several days later, on a peaceful morning, Nagasumi was watching TV and saw an interview with Runa. She looked extremely cute on screen, which was completely opposite of her real-life self. In the kitchen, Sido and Nagasumi's mother were happily washing dishes. The mother was delighted. She had always wanted a daughter like Sido. She remarked that boys were all useless anyway. She was also glad that their house had been rebuilt, thanks to Runa's father, who owned a construction company. After that, Nagasumi's mom decided to go shopping for ingredients and invited the girls to come along, but Runa refused, saying that such chores were for maids in her house. So, Nagasumi's mom and Sido went together, leaving Runa alone with Nagasumi. Runa realized this was her chance to finally spend some time alone with him. Blushing, she told him to come up to her room. Nagasumi immediately thought he was about to become a man. Meanwhile, the 3 dads were on their way to the new house for a visit, the atmosphere in the car completely silent and tense. As for why Runa invited Nagasumi to her room, it was to help her with her homework. Nagasumi said Sito would be a better tutor, but Runa insisted they keep it a secret from her. She had to study because Masa had warned her that if her grades didn't improve, she'd be expelled. Moeri had also offered to help, and while Runa politely accepted on the outside, she didn't want to rely on the police chief's daughter. So her only option was Nagasumi. After whining for a bit, Runa collapsed onto the table in frustration. They eventually began studying, but their position looked questionable. Runa was sitting in Nagasumi's lap. After some arguing, they accidentally fell on top of each other. Just as they were about to kiss, Maki suddenly spoke up, saying they could continue whatever they were doing while she took notes for a report to Sito. The two were now at Maki's mercy. When she said she was thirsty, Nagasumi volunteered to get a drink. While he was gone, Maki told Runa that if she liked Nagasumi, she could just make him hers. When Nagasumi returned, Maki also told him they made a great couple and should get together. Suddenly, the drink spilled and wet Runa's feet, turning them into a fishtail. Nagasumi handed her a towel and said that ever since he met Sito, his heart had belonged only to her, but since he was a slave now, he still helped dry Runa's tail. Just then, the three dads arrived at the gate. Runa's father went up to see his daughter and, upon opening the door, saw Nagasumi drying his daughter's butt. Furious, he pulled out a gun and started chasing him while firing non-stop. He quickly caught Nagasumi and prepared to throw him into the sea. Just then, Sito and Nagasumi's mom returned from shopping. When Sito asked what was going on, her dad claimed Nagasumi had cheated. Though he told Sito he was disappointed and had trusted Nagasumi, behind her back he smirked, happy to finally kick the boy out. Runa demanded he not hurt Nagasumi, and when her father asked if she loved him, she replied yes. Her father then told Nagasumi to take responsibility for his daughter or die. Runa also wanted Nagasumi for herself, so she forced a smile and allowed her dad to take him away. They got on a helicopter, and Runa's father announced the wedding preparations. He said he'd let them know when it was all arranged. Sito tried to chase after them, but her dad blocked her path and told the helicopter to go. Sito went up to the room and stared at the mess of schoolbooks. Maki told her to forget Nagasumi and return to her hometown. But Sito said she couldn't do that if her husband had cheated. It was her failure as a wife. Meanwhile, Nagasumi was thrown into a cold, dark prison and could only scream Sito's name in desperation. The next day, Runa returned to Nagasumi's house to pack her things. Sito stayed in her room while Runa mocked her short-lived marriage. Sito asked what Nagasumi had said about their marriage, and Runa lied, claiming he'd complained a lot about Sito. Hearing this made Sito feel like a complete failure. Runa realized Sito had always believed in Nagasumi without ever asking him if he truly loved her. Runa thought Sito would be angry, but Sito said if Nagasumi had chosen Runa, then Runa wasn't at fault. Runa didn't like seeing the usually strong Sito crying like this, but even so, she had no intention of saying anything. On her way out, she ran into Maki and asked why she hadn't told Sito the truth. Maki said Sito's father was thrilled when Nagasumi left, and she supported his decision, so she didn't plan on saying a single word. Runa blamed Maki for Sito's pain, but deep down she knew it was her own fault for lying. She had no right to accuse anyone else. As Runa left, Sito began packing her things to go. Nagasumi's parents wanted her to stay, but she believed she had no right to be Nagasumi's wife anymore after letting him go. Members of Runa's family then arrived to take Nagasumi's parents to the wedding. Runa went to see Nagasumi, and he realized she still hadn't explained the misunderstanding. He asked why she was always trying to compete with Sito. Runa admitted that Sito had everything she didn't. Her mother left when she was young, and her father was cold and distant. Sito was her only friend, but she always outshined her in everything: family, talent, and now even Nagasumi. That's why she tried to take him. Both of them changed into wedding attire and stepped into the chapel. Some members of Sito's family were present, and when Nagasumi walked up, he was glared at for toying with Sito's heart. A few of them even planned to bomb the place, so Masa had to step in and stop them. Sito's father said Masa wouldn't need to teach anymore and that he was ready to forgive Nagasumi, even warning him to be cautious around Runa's father, who was likely furious about his daughter being taken. Nagasumi was handed a ceremonial cup of sake, and if he accepted it, the marriage would be official. But he refused. He couldn't go through with a fake wedding like this. Runa started crying, which made her father furious and ready to beat Nagasumi. But Nagasumi said Runa's father must love her deeply to act this way. Even if he didn't know how to show affection, his actions proved how much he cared. Runa finally confessed the real reason she lied to win over Nagasumi. But even so, she still loved him and wanted to continue with the wedding. At that moment, Sito burst into the ceremony. Her father thought she had come to punish Nagasumi for cheating, but she declared she was cutting ties with him and leaving the gang. Since she was about to ruin Runa's family's wedding, she didn't want to cause any trouble for her own. She then charged through the guests, defeating Runa's men to reach Nagasumi. She wanted to be his wife once more. Nagasumi said she had always been his wife, but now she had to stand alone against Runa's entire family. Masa and the others stepped in, ready to protect their lady. As the two families were about to break into a bloody fight, Runa's manager proposed a solution. Runa and Sito would use their singing to stop the conflict. The two factions were then forced to dance themselves to exhaustion. Runa finally decided not to force Nagasumi anymore and let time decide his future. Not long after, Nagasumi and the gang returned to school. Sito went to her father and told him to forget about her cutting ties. He immediately went from a depressed mess to cheerful again. Days passed, and Nagasumi's dad couldn't remember how long it had been since he had to eat in the living room. He felt like the whole family had forgotten about him. People talked about Maki more than him. He began to question his role in the house. At school, the group saw Maki being licked by a cat. Nagasumi touched the cat and realized that all three girls, Maki, Runa, and Sito, were scared of it. Runa tried to deny it, but Nagasumi brought the cat closer. He figured out that all merfolk feared cats after all, they were fish. He then brought the cat to school, and everyone loved it except for the three girls, who hid outside the classroom. Later, Nagasumi tried showing the cat to Kai, and it turned out he was still afraid of them too. Nagasumi considered using the cat to scare his father-in-law, but Masa walked by and wasn't afraid at all. He said he had gotten used to the fear long ago. That's when Nagasumi realized that adult merfolk weren't afraid of cats, so his plan to scare the old man was a bust. But then his father-in-law showed up, and the moment he spotted the cat, he immediately backed away. For the first time ever, Nagasumi had the upper hand and gleefully chased his father-in-law around with the cat. He kept holding onto the cat to make sure Sito could safely enter the classroom. She then explained that her father had been afraid of cats ever since one bit his ear while he was sleeping, leaving him traumatized. Nagasumi then noticed that his father-in-law still seemed pissed at him. Not only was he always mad at Nagasumi in general, but now he was extra annoyed after being taunted with a cat. The old man stormed into the classroom and told Maki that they would deal with Nagasumi today. He even ordered her to summon the special ops team. During P class, the shark teacher announced that 3 students from another school had come for a friendly exchange. Just by looking at their grotesque faces, Nagasumi guessed they were merfolk. He was then forced to play soccer with the 3 of them, unaware that their plan was to assassinate him amidst the chaos. But since they didn't know who Nagasumi was, he shoved them toward Kai, who ended up getting beaten up. Enraged, Kai drew his sword and chased after them. Sito's father heard the news and was furious. The special ops team had attacked the wrong target. Maki rushed to personally supervise them, but the entire group was terrified by Nagasumi's cat and fled. The cat ended up chasing nearly all the merfolk in the school. From the merfolk's point of view, reality itself became distorted. One of the special ops members tripped and got touched by the cat, which was so terrifying that Sito's father activated the fire alarm, prompting the fire department to mobilize. Kai even contacted his own forces, bringing in heavily armed units. The students were all evacuated. Amidst the chaos, Maki was gently escorted out of the school by the cat. Meanwhile, the injured special ops member lay dying in Sito's father's arms until Sito's mother showed up to put an end to the madness and scolded everyone for their idiocy. Masa had to formally apologize to the fire department. On their way home, Sito's father and the 3 merfolk planned one last shot at getting rid of the cat. One of them disguised himself and walked up to Nagasumi's group, but his disguise was so terrible that everyone recognized him instantly. Curious to see what he'd do, Nagasumi watched as the guy tried to toss the cat into the water. Taking responsibility, Nagasumi was about to jump in to rescue it, but Sito stopped him, insisting she'd do it herself. She jumped in, but the cat struggled so much that Maki ended up pulling it out of the water, repaying it for helping her escape school earlier. Sito's mother soon found out what had happened and punished her husband and the 3 merfolk again. She asked her husband when he was finally going to stop being afraid of cats. Later, the cat bit Sito's hand, so although she had gotten a bit more used to it, she still couldn't bring herself to approach it once they got home. One day, the class rep had a dream where she met the prince of her life, but ironically, that prince was Nagasumi. The next day, Runa was absent due to work. At school, Kai presented Sito with a bouquet of flowers and a pair of ultra-rare movie tickets that granted the holders a chance to meet the lead actor, who happened to be Sito's idol. Sito refused, saying she couldn't go on a date with Kai. Enraged, Kai swung his sword at Nagasumi, but Saru interrupted and claimed he had a plan. Saru suggested Kai choose a girl to lure Nagasumi and Sito into a group date, giving Kai more chances to get closer to Sito. Kai looked around and chose Mawari. On the day of the outing, the class rep realized that Nagasumi's group was probably out having fun. She grabbed a book to read up on love, and then decided to change herself. She switched her hairstyle and glasses and stepped out. Meanwhile, Nagasumi's group also had to bring along Saru and Runa. Nagasumi felt that Sito's kindness was sometimes ruining all his plans. Mawari read the itinerary, and the first activity was boating. When they drew lots to pair up, Nagasumi still ended up with Sito, while Runa panicked after being paired with Saru. Saru, now thrilled, turned into a total beast. Runa asked Nagasumi to buy her a drink, and as he ran off he bumped straight into the class rep. Because she had changed her appearance, Nagasumi didn't recognize the class rep at all. To make matters worse, he accidentally stepped on and broke her glasses, so he felt responsible and decided to take her along to ask Runa to cover the cost. On the way back, Nagasumi suddenly felt that something might be wrong with Sito and told the class rep to wait while he ran ahead. He found Sito had fallen into the water and was about to be seen by Saru, who would have noticed her tail, so Nagasumi rushed in and knocked Saru out with a kick. He then borrowed some money from Runa, but she only gave him a credit card and warned him to pay on time, or he'd remain her slave indefinitely. Nagasumi returned to the class rep and took her to buy new glasses. Since she wasn't wearing any, she still didn't recognize him. As they walked and talked, Nagasumi realized she had a crush on someone but hadn't confessed. He encouraged her to live honestly and openly, saying he understood more than anyone the pain of regret, since every day he lived under threat from the Yakuza. Meanwhile, Kai and Mawari were left alone in their boat, and the tension was unbearable. Mawari lost her temper and warned Kai not to come closer, but the boat suddenly rocked and Kai fell on top of her. At the same time, Nagasumi continued giving the class rep advice, urging her to have more confidence and confess to the one she liked. As they reached the riverbank, they spotted his father-in-law and the three fishermen playing baseball. They saw Nagasumi with another girl and immediately accused him of cheating again. His father-in-law threatened to drown him, but the class rep explained the misunderstanding, and Sito's mother recognized her and ordered her husband to release Nagasumi. However, he said Nagasumi could only go if he hit the baseball. He signaled the shark teacher to pitch, but Nagasumi ran away in panic. The ball still hit him, and Sito's mother had to step in again and scold her husband to let Nagasumi go. Nagasumi then took the class rep to a glasses store. The shopkeeper was stunned by the credit card, apparently an ultra-premium type capable of buying even a tank. Thinking Nagasumi was some rich young master, the store called a limo to escort him home. On the way, the class rep put on her new glasses and was shocked to realize the person beside her was Nagasumi. She immediately jumped out of the limo, forcing Nagasumi to chase after her. After running for a while, she realized Nagasumi truly hadn't recognized her, so she continued pretending and quietly went home. The next day, Runa and Sito both complained about how lame the group date had been, while Nagasumi went to see the class rep. She thought he'd figured it out, but he only came to tell her that the teacher was looking for her. Everyone still called her class rep, which made her wonder when someone would bother to ask her real name. A few days later, Saru told Nagasumi that there had been ghost sightings at school. Some people saw strange fish-like figures lurking at night. Nagasumi immediately knew who they were. Just then, Sito's father announced the arrival of a new transfer student, Akino. She carried a sword and had an intimidating aura. She was seated between Sito and Runa, and every time they spoke, Akino would jot down notes in a notebook. Nagasumi asked Saru what he thought of her, and Saru suddenly became like a wise sage, claiming that Akino's beauty level even surpassed Runa and Sito's. Nagasumi had to stop Saru from getting too creepy. Akino then tried chatting with Nagasumi and found him to be one of the few normal people in an otherwise insane class. Later, Nagasumi got into another argument with Kai, and Akino stopped them with a quick move using her sword scabbard. She later confided in Sito that she was also a mermaid and an inspector tasked with evaluating which merfolk were fit to remain in the human world. Kai had already failed her test and would have to return to the sea soon. Maki was left home for the day, and Sito was forbidden from sharing this information with anyone. This secret weighed heavily on Sito's mind, making her clumsy and unable to focus. Nagasumi noticed her strange behavior and asked Akino if she knew what was wrong, but Akino told him he should ask Sito himself. When he did go to her, Sito saw Akino nearby and didn't dare say anything. During P, Nagasumi still saw that Sito looked completely out of it. But the shark teacher didn't allow him to stand around staring at girls. He told him to get running with the others or be ready to end up in his jaws. Nagasumi eventually had to ask Sito directly why she had been acting so strange all day. She said she was fine and was just happy that he was worried about her. Nagasumi told her not to push herself too hard, and Akino even complimented Sito for being so strong. Akino encouraged her to act more naturally and not let the pressure get to her. Sito finally relaxed but accidentally bumped into something, knocking over a flower vase that spilled all over her. Akino quickly poked everyone in the eyes to stop them from looking and told Nagasumi to dry Sito's feet. She then left the room and banned anyone from coming near the class. Suddenly, the three fish guys showed up to take revenge on Akino for beating them up before, but she easily took all three down. Then Kai showed up for a rematch, but she casually poked him in the eye too. Sito's father arrived to check on the situation, and Akino told him to dismiss the crowd, so he did. After that, Sito walked out and told Akino her leg was fine now. But Akino took it as a declaration of having passed the test, which was unacceptable, so she attacked Sito. Thinking quickly, Sito grabbed Kai's sword to defend herself and realized she had just failed the test. She worried she'd have to return to her hometown and asked Nagasumi if he'd be willing to come with her. Nagasumi didn't understand what was happening, so Akino decided to delay failing her because Sito had successfully blocked her strike. However, if Sito ever let herself get hit even once, she would fail completely with no forgiveness. A few days later, the three fish guys came back with reinforcements to pick a fight with Akino, but again, she wiped them out with ease. The next day, the same three followed Akino around and swore allegiance to her, calling her Big Sis. Since they were infamous delinquents at school, other students assumed Akino was the new school boss and no one dared cross her. Akino tried to get rid of them, but the other students ran off first. Nagasumi's group showed up to see what was going on, but Akino just ignored the three fish guys. Saru then decided to switch sides and follow Akino instead of serving Kai. Although Akino didn't want him around, Saru was too persistent, so she let him do whatever. Mawari then stepped in and tried to arrest Akino on suspicion of trying to take over the school, but Akino questioned what a disciplinary officer like her could really do. Kai arrived in a submarine and accused Saru of betrayal, but Saru claimed he only followed the strong and that Kai was washed up. Saru then went to see Nagasumi's mother-in-law to get patched up from Kai's attack and told both her and her husband about Akino's rising influence. Sito's father decided it was time to show Akino the true power of their gang. Meanwhile, Mawari and the girls in class began rising up against Akino, blaming her for leading a gang she didn't even form. Most of them were just jealous of her looks. Akino's followers stood ready to support her, even though she kept trying to send them away. She was fed up with all the nonsense, but the school was now clearly split into factions. Saru opened a booth to sell Akino-themed merchandise, which became wildly popular. Even Sito joined in for fun and won a prize. But Mawari and the girls soon arrived to shut it down and destroy all the goods. A meeting was called to decide what to do about Akino. Sito defended her, saying no one had truly tried to understand her. The girls accepted that, but insisted the boys' inappropriate actions still needed to be addressed. At the same time, Sito's mother found her husband and his goons discussing Akino and got angry, wanting to deal with them herself. Mawari arrived seeking advice, so the men quickly fled. Mawari confessed she felt she had judged Akino unfairly. After receiving some helpful advice and promising to guide the students properly, she left feeling more confident. But then the class rep ran in, saying the girls had gone to confront Akino. The three fish guys also decided to turn against her, but Akino said she didn't care what they did as long as they stopped following her. However, they insisted on fighting, so Akino prepared to face them, but Mawari stopped them just in time. She summoned a swarm of cats to break up the fight, but there were so many that things quickly spiraled out of control. The girls protested and rejected Mawari's actions, while Sito's father and his group were watching from afar only to get caught and beaten up by the rooftop crew. Sito's mother then stepped in to resolve the conflict and educate the students. The students were enlightened and apologized for causing trouble for Akino. Akino forgave them and walked away. Sito and Nagasumi realized everything ended too quickly, and they didn't get much screen time this time around. Meanwhile, Sito's father's group was now hanging from the rooftop, and all three would remember the consequences of this mess for the rest of their lives. Saru later returned to Kai, who welcomed him back happily. A few days later, Sito's father apologized to the class for the short notice, but informed them they would be going on a field trip the next day. The whole class panicked. How could they prepare for a trip with only one day's notice? The next day, the trip still went on. Sito told Nagasumi that she was worried her secret might be exposed if she bathed with everyone. Akino said that if she couldn't handle that, she might as well prepare to return to the ocean. Maki then popped out to mock Nagasumi again, but deep down, she knew she had to deal with Akino soon to help Sito regain her freedom. Nagasumi seemed troubled, so Moweri tried to get him to talk, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Saru and Kai noticed how lively things were around Nagasumi compared to the gloomy atmosphere with Akino. Runa was once again absent due to work. After getting off the boat, the class rep found their bus. At their first stop, Sito's father asked Nagasumi to take a family photo for them. Nagasumi noticed that their pose looked more like a Yakuza lineup than a family photo. He also took a picture for Saru and Kai, but noticed Akino sitting alone, so he invited her to go sightseeing. Since Sito was enjoying time with her family, he wasn't too worried. Akino shared that because of her job, she had to transfer schools constantly and didn't have many friends, but kind people like Nagasumi made her happy. Suddenly, Nagasumi sensed danger and shielded Akino. Maki had been lying in wait to ambush her. Though Nagasumi blocked the attack, Maki still managed to hit Akino. However, she didn't transform immediately, and began suspecting that Nagasumi had conspired with Maki to trap her. That night at the inn, Akino avoided Nagasumi despite his attempts to explain. During dinner, the three fish guys couldn't eat because the meal was seafood. Sito had already learned what Maki had done and explained everything to Akino. She was willing to take responsibility for Maki's actions, but just wanted Akino to stop misunderstanding Nagasumi. When it came time for the bath, Saru wondered if Sito was on the girl's side, but Nagasumi firmly said no. The boys then pressed their ears to the wall to eavesdrop on Moweri and the class rep. Kai entered the bath in a full astronaut suit, making everyone think he was insane. Meanwhile, Sito scolded Maki, but Akino showed up and gave Sito one final test. Moweri and Nagasumi arrived and heard noises from the girl's bath that sounded quite suggestive. Realizing this must be mermaid-related, Nagasumi tried to drag Moweri away. But after hearing more from inside, Moweri couldn't resist and ran in only to discover that neither girl had transformed. Nagasumi quickly pulled her out before the girl's limit was reached. He then asked Moweri not to investigate any further out of consideration for him. When he returned to check on the girls, they kicked him out. Later, Nagasumi approached Akino to apologize for earlier. She no longer held a grudge, now knowing it had all been a misunderstanding. She asked Nagasumi if he wanted to leave the Sito family, offering to put him into a special protection program so he'd be safe from retaliation. But he declined. He didn't want to abandon his marriage. Akino realized both husband and wife were equally foolish. She then went to the riverbank to meet with a high-ranking official to report on Sito and Nagasumi's marriage. It turned out Akino had been sent to break them up. The official then insisted that Akino must break up the main couple at all costs. He gave her a drug and told her to make Sito drink it. Once she did, she would awaken to the evil nature of humans. The next day, the class continued their field trip under Sito's father's lead. Meanwhile, Moweri couldn't even look at Nagasumi after the borderline love confession he made the night before. Akino called in the three fish guys and Kai to a secluded place and ordered them to separate Nagasumi and Sito no matter what. If they succeeded, their failed assessments would be voided. Later, Saru suddenly approached Nagasumi to invite him to grab a bite, saying he hadn't seen Kai or Akino all morning and felt lonely because Runa wasn't on the trip either. But right at that moment, the group ran into Runa. She was in the area filming a movie and came by during a break to see them. Since she was busy, her manager called her back to the set and told the others they could come watch backstage. But when they arrived, the studio had been trashed. The staff explained they'd been attacked by thugs. Runa's father then came to fund repairs and hired Nagasumi's group as stand-ins. Nagasumi objected, but he was the only one going against the majority. Akino, Kai, and the three fish guys also joined in. After changing into costumes, the fish guys offered the others drinks, but Nagasumi, still traumatized by the giant energy drink from last time, refused. The fish guys later reported to Akino that the drug would ignite one's desires and push them to the extreme. If Sito saw that side of humans, she would leave Nagasumi. They even slipped the drug to her while she was distracted and ended up drinking it themselves too. Meanwhile, Nagasumi sat with Kai to ask about the scene they were filming. Kai explained the backstory, but Nagasumi noticed someone was watching them. Akino suddenly burst in. She was the stalker and came to punish Nagasumi. He thought she was acting, but she drew her sword and slashed, terrifying him into fleeing. The superior officer arrived and saw Kai and Nagasumi fall, while Akino had already taken the drug. She then asked for a new sword, as hers had broken. Nagasumi was soon pinned down by Runa, but Moweri came to stop the indecent scene. The three then ran into the class rep, who was still upset that no one ever asked for her real name. Nagasumi was then chased by a mob of girls, only to be blocked by Akino in front and the three fish guys from behind. They had him surrounded on a bridge, but Saru returned to his primal monkey instincts and clung to Akino, giving Nagasumi a chance to escape. However, he was still quickly cornered again. At that moment, Sito arrived and used her powers to blow everyone away to protect Nagasumi. Akino then stood up to face Sito, forcing the superior officer to step in. That night, the officer realized that despite being drugged, Sito still protected Nagasumi with all her heart, so separating the two would be much harder than expected. Akino would continue as their supervisor, determined to destroy their marriage by any means. That evening, Nagasumi and Sito went to watch the full moon together, finally some private time during this chaotic trip. Although the journey was a mess, it became an unforgettable memory. A few days later, Masa returned to the bar and ran into Nagasumi's father, who demanded Masa return his wife, but Masa had done nothing. Still, Nagasumi's dad didn't believe him, as his wife had been cold to him lately, even making him eat alone in the living room. Masa didn't know how to help except by offering drinks. Meanwhile, Runa's father had 2 days off to relax, but when he returned home, he found a bomb planted and had to parachute out before the building exploded. He vowed to spend the 2 days with his daughter and let nothing interrupt them. The next day at school, everyone posted pictures from the field trip on the bulletin board to admire. Everyone had lovely photos and joyful memories except Nagasumi, who wasn't thrilled since he had been wrapped up in non-stop chaos. Runa felt frustrated that during the entire school trip, she had been stuck at the film set. Even though she didn't like field trips, she was still upset she couldn't have fun with everyone. Nagasumi noticed someone outside the door, and after looking back and forth, he realized it was Runa's father. Upon asking, he learned the man had the day off and wanted to bond with his daughter. He explained that he had spoiled Runa to make her happy because his wife had once left him due to a lack of affection. However, Nagasumi told him that what Runa needed wasn't material gifts, but genuine affection. Nagasumi then encouraged him to go talk to her and ask her out another day to make up for the missed field trip. But the moment he walked in, his awkward way of speaking got him kicked right back out by Runa. That night, Runa's father searched online to understand how teenage girls think and came across dating sim games. The next day, he wore a sailor school uniform and accompanied Runa to school, shocking everyone. Sito even swore that if her dad ever dressed like that, she'd jump off a bridge. At school, everyone kept their distance from Runa and her dad by at least 10 meters. Sito's father showed up to see what was going on and couldn't believe his rival had such bizarre tastes. When the two went outside to talk, Runa's dad claimed that Sito's father being stuck as a teacher was the result of failing to understand his daughter. He then handed him a dating sim game to study. Meanwhile, the shark teacher felt disillusioned, realizing he didn't join a gang just to babysit. But Masa insisted they obey the boss's orders until he saw the boss earnestly trying to learn about dating games, making him regret his words. Later, the gang tried out the dating sim. The next day, Nagasumi woke up to see Masa trying to act cute. After hearing Maki's recap, he found out even Sito's dad had started acting crazy. Sito didn't want to go to school anymore, afraid of running into her dad in that embarrassing state. But Runa forced her to experience what she herself had endured. When they arrived, Sito's dad was wearing a cat-maid outfit. Horrified, Sito and Runa went to the rooftop to contemplate escape from this life. The two fathers arrived as well, and Nagasumi told them plainly that they were only making things worse. The shark and Masa then showed up to ask to leave the gang and start over. Sito's mom had to step in while Nagasumi's friends guarded the stairs to prevent the students from storming up. Sito's mom told the two dads they were wrong to try so hard to understand their daughters. All they needed to do was be there, guide them, and not spoil them because daughters look to their fathers as role models. The fathers finally understood. Sito's dad gave her the cat ears, but she was so embarrassed she blasted both fathers off the roof. The two were hospitalized, and on the way home, Nagasumi told Sito the cat ears looked great on her, but she smacked him and walked off. Runa knew Sito found the outfit cute, but was too shy to show it. That night, Sito secretly put on the cat-maid outfit again, but was too flustered to face herself. Nagasumi, watching from outside, certainly enjoyed the view. A few days later, the class rep wrote Nagasumi a love letter. The next day, he found it in his shoe locker and brought it into the restroom to read. Excited about receiving his first love letter, he wore a beaming face when returning to class, prompting Maki to snatch the letter and reveal it to everyone. Sito respected him and didn't ask too much. That afternoon, Sito's group and some gossip-loving classmates went to the meeting spot in the letter to find out who had invited Nagasumi. When he showed up and said he planned to turn her down, Sito felt relieved, trusting him completely. However, Nagasumi hesitated with regret, and just then, the two fathers appeared out of nowhere to accuse him of betrayal and prepare to punish him. But Sito let out a powerful scream that blew everyone away, and since Nagasumi couldn't hear anything, he ended up dodging all of his father-in-law's attacks without even realizing he was being scolded. His mother-in-law had to drag her husband away, reminding him he wasn't exactly innocent when it came to eyeing other women. Meanwhile, Runa also dragged her dad away for wearing such an embarrassing outfit. Nagasumi then cried to his mother-in-law about how suddenly getting married had stolen all his youthful experiences of love. Feeling sympathetic, she gave him a potion that would make him popular in others' eyes, warning that since it was made for mermaids, it would be extra potent for humans and should only be used in small doses. But Nagasumi immediately chugged the whole bottle, and even his mother-in-law felt flustered just looking at him. When he returned to class, all the girls began looking at him with admiration. Even Maki wasn't immune to the effects. But when his father-in-law showed up, he only got angrier and punched Nagasumi, and Kai did the same, which made Nagasumi realize the potion only worked on girls while the guys all hated him for it. Since there were more boys than girls in the school, Nagasumi was quickly chased down, tied to a stake, and nearly burned alive. Akino arrived to save him but also got charmed, forcing his mother-in-law to intervene again. She said the potion would wear off by tomorrow. Nagasumi ran home, only to be mistaken by his mom as Masa due to the potion's effect, and she clung to him too. That night, while bathing, Maki and the other girls barged in to bathe with him, but his father-in-law also charged in to finish him off. His biological father returned at that moment, and with the potion still in effect, both dads ended up beating Nagasumi to a pulp. The next morning, everything returned to normal. Nagasumi received another love letter but assumed it was a prank again. However, he still went to the meeting place and found Maki and his father-in-law spying nearby. He then spotted the class rep in her beautiful version coming to confess to him, wanting to break free from her usual image. But she mistakenly bowed and confessed to Sito instead, shocking Nagasumi. Realizing her blunder, she ran away but was reminded by her inner voice that Nagasumi still hadn't recognized her. So she came back, unleashed her emotions, transformed into the final Amazon warrior, and acted like she was truly in love with Sito. However, she deeply regretted it afterward and swore never to take off her glasses again. A few days later, Runa said she had an upcoming role and needed someone to act as her boyfriend for practice. Instead of asking Nagasumi, she asked Sito for help, and Sito took the job way too seriously. The next morning, at breakfast, Nagasumi was shocked to see his wife had turned into a man. According to his mom, this was probably the ideal man Sito envisioned, which looked nothing like Nagasumi. His dad translated it as, "No one can change their partner once married." On the way to school, they ran into Saru, who couldn't believe the sweet Sito had become such a brute and ran off. Sito's behavior grew more domineering and controlling, fitting the modern alpha male image admired by many girls, rough in words but strong when needed, like when she chased a cat away from Runa. Runa became frustrated, realizing she'd picked the wrong person to act as her boyfriend. She caused chaos at school by announcing she was looking for a boyfriend. Kai stayed out of it since he only had eyes for Sito, but Runa's actions reignited the fanbase wars between the two factions. Nagasumi sensed that another war was about to erupt, but then Moeri's third faction also rose up to oppose the other two. Just as all three sides clashed in chaos, Sito arrived at school and immediately stopped the madness simply because no one was willing to accept her in her current form. Her father walked into class and was also horrified to see his daughter like this. That night, Runa gave up and told Sito she didn't need to act as her boyfriend anymore. Just after his mustache was ripped off, Sito returned to normal. Runa then revealed that she had changed her plan and would now participate in a talent contest, asking Maki to help by pretending to be her ventriloquist dummy. Maki didn't like the idea, but Sito spoke up for Runa, so Maki reluctantly agreed to help. The next morning, Runa strapped Maki to her arm and attached a puppet to her. Maki spoke sweetly and politely in front of others, but remained her usual sharp-tongued self with Nagasumi. When they got to school, Runa showed off Maki to everyone, pretending the voice was her own talent. But Maki kept speaking on her own, forcing Runa to keep nudging her. Getting annoyed, Maki started mouthing off, and Runa had to drag her to a corner to scold her. Frustrated, Maki exposed Runa's real self at home, which was nothing like her TV persona. This sparked a fight between the two, while the others thought Runa's performance was just that realistic. Sito intervened to get Maki to make peace with Runa, but Akino had already caught on and requested a private talk with Runa. Akino forbade Runa from putting Maki on TV, warning that if her identity was exposed, the consequences would be more than just the end of Runa's career. Runa refused to listen, so Akino put her under house arrest. But with her stubborn personality, there was no way Runa would obey. She immediately called her manager to pick her up and take her to the contest. Later, during class, Akino went to Kai and the three fish guys and asked them to stop Runa. As soon as the class ended, Runa tried to escape to her manager, but Akino and her group were already waiting to ambush her. Nagasumi also felt this wasn't worth the risk Runa was taking, but Runa saw it as her duty as a star. Maki respected her resolve and used her high-pressure water spray to help. The three fish blocking the exit below were blasted away by Maki, and Sito blocked Akino, saying she had to help her best friend no matter the consequences. Sito then transformed into her masculine form, which made Akino lose the will to fight and allow Runa to go. But Maki returned, saw Sito being attacked, and dragged Runa back to help, letting Akino achieve her goal anyway. Nagasumi and Sito didn't mind since whether Runa went or not, there was risk either way. After being dragged around like that, Runa had to be hospitalized for 3 days. Once back, she had to dive into her homework to avoid falling behind. Maki greeted her with a tattered puppet, scaring Runa once again right before a cat jumped out and doubled her fright. Meanwhile, at the bar, Masa shared with the bartender that he had been dreaming of a little girl calling his name, and this girl felt strangely familiar. The next day at school, Akino brought Sito and Nagasumi to see Masa, asking if he had taught Sito swordsmanship. Masa didn't deny it, though he admitted he couldn't remember where he learned it, as he had no memories before joining Sito's family's gang. Akino explained her concern. The sword style Sito used was the same as her family's, and her older brother, an excellent swordsman, went missing during a mission, which coincided with the time Sito's gang was being evaluated. She suspected her brother might have taught Masa before disappearing. Everyone thought Akino cared deeply for her brother, but in truth, she wanted to punish him for vanishing during duty. Sito's father, who had been watching nearby, seemed worried. He secretly pulled Nagasumi aside and confessed that back then, during a festival night, he had invited Akino's brother to drink. While chatting, the brother mentioned that Sito would one day have a husband. That made him angry enough to punch the guy. By the time he realized what he'd done, the man had already lost his memory. He had only planned to care for him until he recovered, but no progress had ever been made. And when the new examiner came looking, Sito's father lied that the previous one had fled. Yes, Akino's older brother is Masa. Later, both girls came to the dojo to observe, and Nagasumi grew worried that if this secret was revealed, Akino would definitely kill Masa. At that moment, Masa asked to borrow the sword Akino was carrying. As soon as he held it, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, prompting Nagasumi to jump in and create a commotion. He claimed he wasn't feeling well and needed Masa to take him home, but Sito offered to do it instead, leaving Akino to train with Masa. Unable to stop them, Nagasumi clung to Masa, even accepting being called gay if it meant keeping Masa away from Akino. The class rep happened to pass by and overheard this, completely losing faith in Nagasumi. Still, Masa wanted to continue holding the sword, so Sito's dad charged in and punched him. Masa didn't give up, so he punched him again. Masa began regaining more memories, forcing the father to keep punching. When Akino tried to stop him, she got hit as well and lost her memory, turning into a little girl. Masa, meanwhile, saw his younger self from 10 years ago and decided to give his current body back to its rightful owner. But the younger Masa insisted that the present Masa should keep living, as the bonds and relationships he built over the past 10 years were irreplaceable. He would always live on in Masa's heart. Masa then woke up and told the boss he still had things to do. He went to Akino to reclaim his sister, but Akino didn't believe he was her brother. Her brother didn't have messy hair like his. She ran off, so Sito decided the best way to help was to throw her off the rooftop to trigger a mental shock. Sure enough, Akino regained her memories, but had no idea what just happened up there. Masa then told Nagasumi and the boss that his memories had returned. Sito's father prepared to accept the consequences, but Masa didn't hold it against him, saying he'd been happy these 10 years. That night, Nagasumi explained to Sito that he wasn't actually gay, but Sito didn't listen to a word, simply saying she would try to understand him better. Meanwhile, the class rep suddenly went to a hair salon to get a messy hairstyle and a beard like Masa's, believing he was Nagasumi's type. A few days later, Nagasumi's group saw Kai leaving a clinic. When asked what he was doing there, Kai claimed he had a cold and left. Everyone knew he was hiding something, so the next day Mawari volunteered to tail him everywhere. But she couldn't follow him into the men's restroom and had to give up angrily. Nagasumi remembered that the clinic was dermatology related and, judging from Kai's behavior, guessed he had an embarrassing condition, maybe boils on his butt. Saru refused to believe that and thought there must be some noble reason behind it, but no one else bought it. Later that day, Saru passed by the clinic and overheard the doctors discussing Kai's case. They mentioned it was their first time encountering something like it and sighed, making Saru think Kai had a terminal illness. In reality, the sighs were due to how arrogant and troublesome Kai was. Saru then tearfully approached Kai, who panicked, thinking his shameful secret had been exposed, and told Saru not to say a word. Saru, on the other hand, believed Kai didn't want pity, which was why he kept quiet. The next day, Saru began picking fights with people to protect Kai's dignity. Even though Kai begged him to shut up, Saru felt he had to tell someone, so he chose Nagasumi. After hearing the story, Nagasumi decided to treat Kai better. He then started acting all gruff and later, along with Saru, gathered everyone to tell them the truth. So, a secret one person knew became known by the entire class. The class then threw a party to celebrate Kai. Kai, unaware of the reason, thought everyone genuinely appreciated him and happily joined the festivities. Soon, the whole neighborhood saw him as a hero, which made him overjoyed. But back in his submarine, Kai watched TV and discovered that people were only being nice to him because they thought he had a terminal illness. The Remember Kai campaign was now all over the media. Kai then ran to find Saru and asked what the deal was with this supposed terminal illness, since the doctor had only told him to apply ointment regularly and he'd be fine. But Saru thought the doctor was just trying to comfort Kai, which made Kai start to believe he really was dying. At that moment, Kai decided to do something he'd regret if he died. The next day, Kai invited Nagasumi to the riverbank for a one-on-one duel, saying he'd always wanted to defeat Nagasumi and take Sito for himself. But Sito remained steadfast; she would never leave Nagasumi to go back to Kai. Still, Kai insisted on fighting. He even took off his helmet to live life to the fullest, and the two clashed, Kai attacking while Nagasumi dodged. Runa cheered from the sidelines, but instead of looking at Kai, she kept facing the camera. Kai expressed his jealousy, saying Nagasumi had everything while he was completely alone. Nagasumi eventually took Kai down and encouraged him to make the most of whatever time he had left and find the happiness he still longed for. After delivering a dramatic, last moment, Kai collapsed, and everyone thought he had passed away. But the next morning, Kai showed up to school as if nothing happened, so Nagasumi immediately punched him for faking a terminal illness, since it turned out he just had a boil on his butt. Everyone agreed Kai was still a fool, but the good news was that he was alive and well. A few days later, Aquino and the superintendent met with the man who had been plotting to sabotage Sito's marriage. Seeing Aquino fail repeatedly, he lost faith in her and decided to take matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, Sito was doing housework and wanted Nagasumi to pay attention to her, but he was too focused on the TV and Runa's interview. He admitted he liked Runa at first sight, which made Sito feel deeply hurt. She felt like she meant nothing to him. Nagasumi said their marriage had been forced from the beginning, so of course there was no love at first sight. That comment pushed Sito over the edge. To her, she was just a wife in name, not someone he truly loved. Nagasumi's mom urged him to apologize, but he refused, saying he hadn't done anything wrong. The next day in class, everyone could tell something had happened between them. Mawari asked Sito in private, and Sito said it all stemmed from a trivial matter. Mawari believed Nagasumi would come around and apologize. But Kai, upon hearing the news, encouraged Nagasumi to break up with Sito. He then tried to flirt with Sito himself and got knocked out by Aquino. Later, Aquino informed the Sito family that a man named Yashio had invited them to a banquet. Sito's father didn't like Yashio at all, calling him a perverted playboy. But since other clans would be attending, he reluctantly agreed, as Yashio's family held influence in the underworld. That evening, when Nagasumi returned home, he kept joking around with Runa, missing a final chance to apologize to Sito. She gave him one last warning, saying, "Take care," but in her dialect, which Nagasumi didn't understand. That night, Sito packed her things and left with Maki. The next morning, Nagasumi found out from his parents that Sito had left. He went to school with Runa, and only then realized that not just Sito, but her entire family had disappeared. Kai then went to Aquino to find out what was going on. Though she didn't say anything, Kai's intel told him that Sito's family had gone to Yashio's place. Upon hearing Yashio's name, Runa panicked, knowing his reputation was far from good despite his prestigious lineage. They suspected Sito might be the real target of the party. Kai and Runa decided to go rescue Sito, ignoring Aquino's warnings. Runa wasn't sure whether to bring Nagasumi along, but Kai said they'd give him a chance to choose. Meanwhile, Nagasumi revisited all the places he and Sito had shared memories. In her room, he found the ring he had once given her left behind. Elsewhere, Sito's family arrived at Yasho's mansion and were confused as to why no other clans were present. Yasho greeted them, but then secretly released a knockout gas. Just as Sito's mother realized what was happening, everyone collapsed. Back on the bridge, Nagasumi ran into Mawari, who gave him a wake-up call, helping him realize how much Sito meant to him. That's when Nagasumi finally decided he would go find Sito. And right at that moment, Kai arrived in his submarine to pick Nagasumi up. Nagasumi then joined Kai and Runa on an undersea mission to rescue Sito's family. The submarine soon entered a sea minefield, and while Nagasumi was confused why Soru was here, it turned out Saru had simply followed Kai, hoping for a reward if the mission succeeded. Runa then used her singing voice, amplified through a speaker, to destroy a large number of sea mines and clear a path for the sub to move forward. Meanwhile, Sito's parents were being held in an extremely secure location. Her mother regretted dragging the whole family here despite her husband's protests, and her father swore to tear Yushio apart if he dared to touch his daughter. Yushio, however, was still keeping Sito locked in a room, having not yet acted. Akino warned him not to get too depraved or the capital would punish him, but Yushio arrogantly claimed that the capital had built this isolated place specifically so they wouldn't have to control him, meaning, here, he was the law. Akino could do nothing, since her family was bound by laws that forbade them from attacking nobility. Just then, Nagasumi's submarine crashed directly into Yushio's mansion. Sito's father immediately recognized that the boy he despised the most had arrived. Nagasumi soon saw the sheer number of Yushio's guards below. Kai and his own troops dove in to fight, while Runa began singing to drive both sides into a frenzy, creating such disturbing chaos that it had to be censored from broadcast. Runa then pointed Nagasumi to the path leading to Sito. Nagasumi made his way into the main hall, where Yushio appeared to welcome him but quickly dismissed him, leaving Akino to deal with Nagasumi while he returned to his room to make a move on Sito. Akino reluctantly followed orders, but Nagasumi challenged her. Did she become a swordswoman just to serve a wicked man like Yushio? His words woke something in Akino, and she decided to rebel. But Yushio summoned a sea monster to take her out. Just as the beast was about to devour Nagasumi, his father-in-law arrived and saved him. However, Yushio summoned even more henchmen to surround them. Maki and the others also arrived to assist Nagasumi and the boss. Sito's mother urged Nagasumi to flee, but he refused. He swore he wouldn't leave without Sito. She once saved his life, and now it was time for him to return the favor. He'd inherited the chivalrous spirit of the Sito family, and he would prove himself worthy of her. For the first time, his father-in-law accepted him and cleared a path so Nagasumi could get to Yushio. Another sea monster appeared, but Runa, Kai, and Saru showed up and used sonic waves to take it down. When a third monster appeared, Runa's father joined the fight and took care of it. Nagasumi finally caught up to Yushio, but as a human, he couldn't match a merman in strength and was beaten down. Still, he managed to apologize to Sito. The sound of the ring hitting the ground miraculously woke her from the effects of the knockout gas. Furious, she yelled at Yushio, but he pulled a gun and pointed it at her, prompting Nagasumi to shield her. Yushio fired without hesitation yet. Thanks to the deep bond between Nagasumi and Sito, the bullet had no effect. In fact, it triggered a power within Nagasumi that deflected all incoming bullets. He then unleashed a flurry of punches, smashing Yushio's face and launching him into the distance. Yushio reverted into an ugly catfish form, and the superintendent vowed to report all of his crimes to the capital for punishment. Nagasumi then placed the ring back on Sito's finger and sincerely apologized for his past words. The two were reunited once again, much to the rage of his father-in-law and Runa. A few days later, Nagasumi returned completely transformed, now a muscle-bound, towering man with a chivalrous heart. His new presence intimidated even Kai, who no longer dared to mess with him. And with that, the story came to an end.